Good morning, good evening, and welcome to Keep It Real with me, Rudi Lickwood. This week I'll be talking to Nigel Beckles. In the 80s, he was a DJ playing at Dougie's Night Spot, People's Club, Night Moves, Sports Nights, Clubbing Podium, Limelight. We remember all those places, King on the Rye, Rejected by Choice FM. Even though he was studying accountancy, did that stop him? No. He became a certified relationships coach, speaker, workshop facilitator, creator of interesting conversations with interesting people. Let's find out who he is. After all, he's an unsung hero. Hello and good evening. Welcome, man. It's the Rudi Lickwood Chat Show. Yes, you've joined me. Thank you very much for joining me. It'd be nice if you said hello. You know me. I like it when you say hello. Give me a little thumbs up. Give me a little, a little something that says that you're in the room. You know what I mean? Just to let me know that I'm not alone. You know what I mean? There's nothing worse than being alone, you know? Jesus Christ. Mind you, though, you know what? I've been alone today, you know, and it's been nice. It's been nice. Wifey gone back to work. The young one, the little one, the youngest one, she gone polytechnic. You know what I mean? So I had the yard to myself. Yes. So I was walking around, you know what I mean? Me in Kimbo. Yeah, it was a terrible sight, to be honest with you. You wouldn't want to see it. You would. I mean, back in the day, of course, you know what I mean? Now, you know, back in the day, this here, you see this belly, yes, sir? Boy, and I tell you, talk about washboard, you know what I mean? You could have washed your clothes from his stomach. And I'm talking about when you get the squeaky sound out of it. You know what I mean? But now it's more like a Watley's party thing. And do you know what I mean? You can't really wash nothing on it. Everything will just slide off. But good evening. Thank you for joining me, Claire. Thank you for joining me. Craigie. Craig, man, I saw you out and about, man. You and the little one in the park, all by your lonesome. She had a little day off. You guys was going up and down the swings. Do you know what I mean? I'll tell you something. It was nice. It was nice watching that, Craig. I mean, for me, those are the moments to cherish, in truth, because, you know, when she gets older, yeah, and she tell you that her boyfriend's going to be coming out of the bedroom, right? You ain't going to know how to handle it. Your little girl will turn into a big girl, man, I'll tell you the truth. Juicy Julie, thank you for joining me, darling. How are you? Evening, blessings, Rudi, R&B crew, keeping it real crew. As she would say, people are coming in the room. Thank you. Keep coming. I have to say this. Subscribe. It's important. It's so important that you subscribe. It's so important that you like. It's so important that you share. Do you know what I mean? Sharing is caring. You know what I mean? In this case, sharing could mean ding 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 ding. But I'm way off that. Claude, Miss Thornton, how you doing? Good to have you in the room, darling. I got to get you out. In fact, I got to sit down and have a little chat with you. Yes, darling. Me have to interview you. My talk to the truth. Jackie, how you doing, Jax? Nice to have you in here, dear. How you doing? How's the toothache? I hope the toothache has now sorted itself out. I've been kissing my teeth. Or people see that I'm kissing my teeth, but I'm not kissing my teeth. You know what I mean? It's the gaps in between. That's what it is. People feel say I'm being rude, but I'll be rude, you know. It's just that. Me have gaps. I've got what they call receding gums. The gum line I push back like my head. You know when your hair back push back to the point where you can kiss your neck back. That's how far back my head is going right about now. So, how has your week been, everybody? How has your week been? Blessing, hun. I'll inbox you. Please do inbox me the number. That would be well appreciated. How has your weekend been? My weekend has been absolutely fantastic. Fantastic, I'm telling you, man. I'm not gonna lie, man. I just tore the arsehole out of the Hackney Empire. It's been such a long time since I've been on that stage. It was beautiful to see. It was a sold out show. Big shout out goes out to Stamina and the boys. Big shout out goes to me love me sense. Yes, me love me sense. Me love me sense. I may say yes, me love it. Yes, man. Top Cat was there. Don Campbell was there. Man, I was in my element. When I tell you I was in my element, I mean, I was in my... Because you know me, I'm of the boom, bye-bye generation, yeah? I'm not saying that it was politically correct. I'm just saying that's the generation that I come from. So when a man like Top Cat lick the stage, you know, say, me now sit down in my seat, me have to get up and dance. You understand what I'm saying? and people were getting up and dancing. You can see that people ain't been out for a long time. A lot of people, by the way, a lot of people was giving it all this. Yeah. A lot of people was walking around with magnets, right? Like pieces of metal was sticking to their arm. I ain't lying. I could have taken out a magnet, right? And I could have pulled half the crowd to one side of the theater. I could see who was taking the thing, you know what I mean? I could see who was taking the thing. And believe it or not, right? They have decided that they are no longer going to request that people have a jab in order to go into the clubs, right? They've realized what will happen, because the same thing when they tried to do that rubbish with the MOT and all them kind of thing there, and man just work it out, and you know what I mean? Know a man who know a man who know a man, and you just bypass the old thing. And not only that, but it would have brought the industry down. But enough of me talking about that. What you're here today is to meet my guest. He's a certified relationship coach. How he ended up being a certified relationship coach, that's the question, really. I think that's the question. How do you be a relationship, right? A certified relationship coach, right? When that's not how you started out. Do you know what I mean? You know what I mean? And the thing is that this guy deals with some serious, I mean, I'm not lying. I mean, he deals with some serious stuff. But before that, right, the guy was in Dougie's, he was in People's, he was in Night Moves, he was in Spotlight, he was in Limelight, he was in King on the Ride, he was in Granaries. I mean, who the hell is this guy? Who is he? I mean, is the question. But he is my guest for tonight. That is who he is. So, if you guys ain't going to share with me what you've done over the weekend, I think we can push on. Do you mean the jabba? Dude. You know, yeah, words that be the jabba. Yeah, I mean, because none of us want to get kicked off here. So we use our little code words, them, the jabba. Yeah? Or should we say people walking around with pieces of metal hanging to their arm and their forehead and their nose twitching. I could see them twitching in the front row. I could see them twitching. They were twitching, man. They were twitching. Yeah, I mean. But I do believe that my guest is not twitching. He's sitting down, waiting patiently for me to bring him into the room. So please allow me to introduce you to Mr. Nigel Beckles. Come in, sir. Nigel.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
Boy, I'm not too bad. In fact, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. I didn't think I was going to feel good today, but Jano, do you know what I mean? It was like the heavens opened up. It said, you know what? The house is yours. So because the house is yours, yeah, you could do whatever you want and you don't have to care. You don't have a care in the world. Whereas you're single, aren't you?
Well, I'm single at the moment, but I thought you walking around in your birthday suit was a little bit too much information. But anyway.
Nah, not in today's world, it's not. I mean, nowadays, right, people go to the point which I thought would be a personal thing, yeah, where if their missus is getting a scan, it ends up on Facebook. Have you seen that? I've seen people put their missus having a scan up on Facebook.
Well, whatever floats your boat, but that wouldn't be for me.
Okay. It seems as though you've got a few people in the room who know you.
Oh yeah, hi Claude. I haven't actually met Claude yet, but once this COVID thing calms itself down, there are quite a few people I'd like to meet actually.
Well, the thing is that you've actually met quite a few people, because I mean, you're not just a certified relationship coach. You're a podcaster, you're an author, you're a DJ, you know, you're a counselor, you're an entrepreneur. We're gonna have to break all of this down. You know that, don't you? We're gonna have to. I mean, there are so many different things that you've done, right? Whereas normally people would decide, right, I'm gonna study one thing and focus on that one thing. Whereas,
well, I think in the past in this country, yes, it was very much like, you know, you were known for one thing and that's all you've done. But when I look at the American culture, you know, in America, you can be a singer, you can be a comedian, you can be an actor, you can do all different types of things. You're not kind of restricted in that sense in terms of what other people expect of you. But it is getting better here now.
Yeah, I'm noticing that people are. I think the fact that COVID has come along, believe it or not, and it's actually done people a favor in terms of looking at they've been forced to look at skills they never thought they had.
Yeah, and even invent some, because when I started podcasting, that started as a lockdown project.
Okay, well, tell us about the podcasting. Tell us about that.
Okay, well, the podcasting, I was being interviewed about my book. The first book I published, which is here, there somewhere. Anyway, yeah.
Pull it back a bit. Show us the book properly. Right. Pull it more to your face. Pull it more to your.
Oh, I see, like that.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah. So that was published in 2015. So I was being interviewed by a podcaster about my book, and he said, "Oh, Nigel, have you ever thought about podcasting?" And I said, "Oh, well, what's that?" So I done some research, and I thought, well, a zillion people seem to be doing it. It can't be that hard. So I downloaded some free editing software, practiced for a week. Then I jumped on my Facebook friends list and just started inviting people to get interviewed, really. But my initial motivation to start podcasting, because I'm an advocate for victims and survivors of domestic abuse.
Of course.
So I thought podcasting would be a good way to raise awareness about the issue. So my early podcasts were with a lady called Patricia Walton. She's a presenter on Chalk Hill Radio, and she's also an advocate. So that's how
we all know Patricia.
Yeah, lovely lady. There she is.
Yeah, she's here. She's only the other day. I was doing. She broadcasts out of the Grange Museum, which is in Neasden.
Okay.
And I was politely asked to come down and do a performance. Just, you know what I mean, as a comedian who's in the locality of the area. And I was moaning and complaining about the fact that, no one really has paid any mind to the good works that I've done. I've tried to build up Harlesden. I've tried to, black power to everybody, black power. No one's paid me no mind. And the next thing I knew, this young lady decided that I was going to receive an award.
Oh.
Yeah, she just, out of the blue, she just walked up on stage. She goes, "Hey, Rudi, you've been moaning about no one caring or noticing what you do. Well, guess what? We've got an award for you." And I went, it almost brought tears to my eyes. But you know what I mean? The male pride and ting, I had to say, I'm not going to shed no tears. I'm not going to shed no tears. I'm not going to shed no tears. But you said that the podcasting came through lockdown.
Yes, it started off as a lockdown project, basically. But due to my previous experience, obviously being with Choice FM for 10 years and having a qualification in radio presentation and production, switching to podcasting was seamless because the same principles apply. It's all about audio. It's all about audio editing, how you format your show. So I started off, as I said, in terms of raising awareness regarding domestic abuse, but then it kind of blossomed. So, I've done...
Yeah, because you've done nearly about 150 podcasts, if I'm correct.
173 so far.
173 podcasts.
And that's in 15 months. I mean, some days I was doing 3 interviews a day. So they racked up quickly. So
so you're trying to tell me you ain't got nothing better to do apart from sit down and just talk.
Well, it's like anything else in life. The more you practice something, the better you get. So, if I do an interview for 30 minutes, I mean, that might take me, in the early days, might take me 2 hours to edit that.
Okay.
But now I've learned certain tricks and shortcuts, so a 30-minute interview for me to edit now, you're probably looking about maybe under an hour to do a decent job.
So does that mean straight after you've done the podcast, you then you go straight into editing or
yes. Yeah. Once I've done the interview, then I just want to get the project finished, basically. So once I've done the interview, then I do the editing, do the production, and publish it, basically, because it's like anything else. It's about the marketing. You see, in podcasting, there is this idea that you should publish on a certain day or upload, as I say, on a certain day.
Right.
But I look at it because I've got a background in promotion as well. To me, it's not necessarily the issue of when you choose a particular day. It's how much marketing are you doing on that particular episode. So when I publish an episode, certain episodes I'll use a Facebook boost. I'll pay to, you know, get it advertised properly. I don't use those people who advertise, oh, we'll get you 1,000 downloads for $5, because that's usually
I've seen loads of those. I've seen loads of those.
I don't entertain that. But it's been an interesting journey podcasting. I mean, I've interviewed Jane Elliott.
Right, tell us a bit about Jane Elliott. Because in fact, tell people who Jane Elliott is. I think some people may know her, but tell them who she is. Right,
Jane Elliott is known internationally as a anti-racism, diversity educator and advocate. She has been on the Oprah Winfrey Show 5 times. And in fact, she turned down Oprah Winfrey. When Oprah's team contacted her for the 6th appearance, Jane said, nah, I've had enough of that now. But lovely lady, very, very gracious lady. I mean, she was born in 1933, so she's 80 plus now, and sharp as a tack.
Because I mean, it was her who spoke about racism, wasn't it? If I'm correct.
Yes, and during the interview, you know, she explained that, you know, back in the 60s, 70s, you know, she was getting death threats and all sorts just for the work that she was doing. So yes, and how I interviewed her actually was interesting, because I was just laying in bed one morning, not thinking about racism or diversity. I just thought, wouldn't it be great if I could interview Jane Elliott? So I got up, Googled her name, found her website, sent her an invitation with a link to my website where all my interviews are. And within 2 hours, she emailed me back and said, yeah, she'd love to come on my show.
Oh my God.
So that
must have been quite a surprise to you.
Oh, I was very surprised, because I used to watch Jane Elliott. The first time I came across Jane Elliott actually was on Oprah Winfrey's show. That's probably back in the 90s. But yeah, I was shocked and humbled. But yeah, she's a lovely lady. Lovely lady.
She is. I mean, she even demonstrated that the size of Africa is twice as what we actually are told that it is, and that we're using the incorrect maps.
That's correct. Yes.
And I saw some of the workshops she did with white children where she split them up in terms of eye color. That's
right. The blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise.
Yeah. And it didn't take too long before there were some crocodile tears dribbling down some of those kids' eyes. Whereas the thing is, that's something that we have to put up with every day.
Yeah.
That's a daily occurrence. I mean, what was it like for you as a child growing up? I mean, where were you? I mean, your parents are Barbadian, if I'm correct.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So what was it like for you? Was you born in the UK or?
Yes, I was born in a hospital in Kensington, London.
No. Let's just not say Kensington in London. Let's say St. Mary's Abbots. St. Mary's Abbot, because that's exactly where I was born, my friend. I wasn't born in Park Royal. I wasn't born in Harlesden, like some of the roughneck that me from past Pan Street. You understand? I was born in Kensington, right? Kensington, St. Mary's Abbots. Okay.
Well, I don't know the name of the hospital off the top of my head, but it was Kensington. Okay. So, and then I grew up in East Croydon. So East Croydon, back in those days, back in the 70s, it was very white, middle-class area. I think on my road, which was quite long, Chisholm Road, there were only 3 black families. But I didn't actually experience any racism as a child growing up. It was only when I
mean, how could you? I mean, look at you. Look at red skin thing. Look at you.
well, I was only probably about 3 months old there.
Is it 3 months? That is engulfing you, bruv. That's the biggest diaper I've seen in a long time. I'm not gonna lie. Childhood was fine. I mean, funny enough, I was thinking about this yesterday. There was a family who lived opposite me, the Keir family. They were from Scotland, and I was friends with some of the boys, some of the sons, and the father. He was a BBC producer, and what he'd do, he'd get like, say 5 or 6 children from the street, go to sit in his front room, and we'd do voiceovers
So I was doing voiceovers for like the Magic Roundabout. I'm definitely giving my age away now.
Hold on. So you did voiceovers for the Magic Round. So what would you, Zebedee? Would you do?
I couldn't tell you who I was. I couldn't tell you who I was now, but yeah.
Listen, man, a lot of people in here watch Magic Roundabout, yeah. And look at that. Patricia's actually saying you were too cute.
You're too kind, Patricia.
And Claire is complaining. She's saying that now wrong with Park Royal Hospital. I was born there. Yeah, I could tell that you was born there. You're so uncouth. I've got no idea who this is. I can't even understand the hieroglyphics, man.
Yeah, well, I can't read that language, so.
Is it? It's not something that you'd find on the pyramids of Egypt either. I think I'm being trolled. Whoa, Jem, I'm being trolled. Can you believe this? That's got to be a plus. Sorry. But when you get trolled, that means that you must be doing something right. That's how I'm looking at that. Oh my gosh, Magic Round. You remember Magic Roundabout? Remember Zebedee though? Who else was in the Magic Roundabout? You had Zebedee, you had Florence, I remember you had the cow, you had the guy with the spring. I know one of them was on drugs. I know that one. I know one of them was on drugs. I don't know who this person is. But anyway, so you were saying that you did voiceovers for the BBC?
Yeah, but I was only 5 or 6. We were just doing it in their living room, basically. And then when I was about 6, 7, I had a part in an educational program. And my words, I had one line, because it was about drains. So I had to walk up to this engineer and I had to say, "What you doing down there, mister?" And that was my claim to fame.
You sound like a right cockney here, innit? Oi, mister, what you doing down there, eh? What you doing down there? Eh?
Well, it's funny you say that, because when I started off on pirate radio, a lot of people assumed I was a white guy. And even when I was on Choice FM, people assumed I was a white guy. But for many black people who work in like management, as it were, we sometimes have to be kind of schizophrenic, because we kind of adopt a certain persona and certain way of speaking.
I would be inclined to say a lot of black people are actually schizophrenic, because it's often been said that we have to. I mean, things are changing so much now. I mean, how did you feel about last week on Friday when they had all these black programs on Channel 4, right? Because, you know, we've never been allowed to actually be ourselves. When you come into the workplace, you can't be yourself. You're seen as, we've always got to downplay who we are in order for our Caucasian counterparts to feel comfortable.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, very, 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 very true. Because, you know, if you've got black colleagues, you're going to greet them in a different way. You know, you go to work and you've got a black colleague, you can say, well, wagwan, or whatever. Then if you meet a white colleague, oh, good morning.
Yeah.
How was your week?
You just switch it up. You just switch it up.
Yeah.
You know, because the thing is that I noticed that you mentioned that you've mentioned several times, in fact, that you know, radio was your thing. Yeah. But I mean, tell us a bit about the Georgian club in East Croydon that got you into, or where the interest actually came from when it came to getting into radio. Because I couldn't help but notice the little gram behind you.
Yeah, that's the living room at Chisholm Road, actually, as I recall. The Georgian club. My father and a white chap called Charlie, they opened one of the first black clubs in the UK, and it was a raging success. So this club was very popular, but the club was maybe about 10 minutes walk from my secondary school. Okay. So me and some friends would like leave school, go to the club and pick up some equipment, some records, go back to school, find an empty classroom. This is after school's finished, obviously. Find an empty classroom, find some cardboard, darken out the windows. And I had a good friend of mine, and we're still friends to this day, Michael Morgan. So I would play the music and Michael would collect the money, 10p to get in or 20p, whatever.
So is that when the entrepreneurial spirit kicked in, that you realized? I mean, what?
I couldn't even say if it was then in particular, but that's what we were doing. And the funny thing about that was Michael, Years later, I was the resident DJ at Night Moves, and Michael was the security at Night Moves. And we used often joke and say, look, we haven't really changed a lot in what we're doing. You're still doing the door, and I'm still playing the music.
Right.
So, yeah, but that's when I got into DJing, because I started DJing when I was about 13, 14.
So that's this image here then?
Yeah, that's at London Zoo. With a friend of mine, Douglas McGlynn, sadly no longer with us. But yeah, so that's when I started DJing, really, when I was like 13, 14. Then I kind of left that for a while because I moved on and I was going to college part-time, or evening college actually, because where I was working in West Norwood, I worked for a company called Fleetway Clutch and Brake. And the company was on the same road as South London College. So I enrolled to do accountancy, because when I was working at this place, I was doing credit control. So getting money in and sorting out the wages. And, you know, so when I joined South London College, then I met some guys. We became friends. So we decided to start a group. So I was joint lead singer and songwriter. And we started this group.
So you were singing back then. You were actually singing. Yeah,
79 to 81. Yeah. So the DJing kind of got parked up because I was focused on doing that.
Okay. And that was like on a Tuesday and a Fridays. And the name of the group was The Progression, I believe.
Yeah, Progression. Yeah, called Progression. So we used to rehearse at a barbershop in Balham called Austin's Barbers. And it was on Boundaries Road, Balham. So the rehearsal studio was underneath. Mm-hmm. So we were practicing one evening, and this guy come down and he said, "Oh, I really like how you sound. You know, I want you to be on my show." So obviously we were excited. We were only like 18, 19 at the time. So, you know, we done the gig, and then the guy came down the studio to pay us, and he said, "Oh, sorry, we never met no money, you know." So.
Yes,
so he basically shortchanged us, and obviously he made money because we were selling tickets. But bearing in mind there were 7 or 8 of us in the group, so we were all selling tickets. So the place was packed out. The gig was at Balham 200 Club, Balham High Road. Okay. So we thought, well, why don't we just do it ourselves? So we booked the venue. We booked TWJ to do the music, who were a very popular sound system at that time, and we put the gig on, and it was a great success. So we carried on. We carried on for another 2 shows.
Okay.
But then, unfortunately, some members of the group began to think we were going to be the next Aswad or whatever. Some egos got a little bit out of control.
Okay.
And fights ensued. Okay. And then the group broke up. So the guys who were involved in the promotion side, which was myself, a guy called Tony Francis, and Harold Bradnock, we decided to start a promotion company called Fair Play Promotions.
I don't know if anybody can remember Fair Play Promotions, because I know you're slightly older than me, but I mean I was raving around and about that time. So was that always towards South London side though?
No, because our first promotion was actually at Dougie's nightclub. East London.
Okay.
Yeah, Dougie's. Yeah. So, and we actually started a proper limited company, you know, and all of that. And we were seen as young upstarts because obviously we were probably early to mid 20s at that time. So obviously all the seasoned promoters saw us as, you know, young upstarts kind of getting on the scene. But we done really well. Fair Play done very well indeed. You know, for while it was going.
Mm-hmm. And what made you decide to make it a legal entity though? Because not everybody would have been thinking on that kind of level to make it.
Well, it was a joint decision because it was 3 of us. So we'd have meetings as you do, and we just made the decision that would be the best move to make to actually have a you know, to create a limited company. But there are a lot of things that I've done that are kind of standard now. Like I had business cards when I was obviously when we started the company. You had to have business cards. When I started DJing, I had business cards.
Okay.
So it just seemed the right thing to do at the time. And plus, it does gives you more credibility, and it does give you certain maneuverability in certain things you want to do. That's obviously if you make a loss in a year, you can write off certain things. You can write off your expenses, for example.
Right. Okay.
So there's things that there are advantages to having a limited company.
So was it because of the band why you decided to take up the DJing, and Dougie's being the first night spot that you started?
Well, after the band finished and then we started Fair Play, then I got back into DJing. So I was actually the resident DJ for Fair Play, for want of a better way of putting it. So I was always a DJ on the bill, if not the main DJ.
Okay.
So that's how I started to get back into DJing again. But even prior to that, I had started a couple of years before. I'd started a sound system, or party sound system. So I started doing that, and then kind of just got back into DJing. And I had a very good friend of mine, Lawrence Friedman, again sadly no longer with us. Jewish guy, white guy, but he was so funny. And we spent a lot of time together. We actually DJed together a lot. And we'd spend like a Saturday. There was a shop in Croydon called Beano's, a second-hand record shop. We'd spend all Saturday in there, just looking for tunes, because Beano's, how they made their money was, someone would find like an Elvis LP in the attic, sell it to them for like £1, and it's worth like £200-300.
See, whoa.
But the black music gave it no value. So you could pick up, I could go there, pick up tunes like Best of My Love Emotions, 50p or 25p.
See.
So starting back onto the DJ seed was good. But then because I got into DJing again, then I got into radio. I started to become interested in that.
Yeah. So it was Horizon. Is it Horizon?
No, I started off, my first pirate station was Fame FM. And Fame FM was run by Trevor and Spence. And Trevor and Spence were the owners of Night Moves.
Okay.
Prior to Night Moves, they were the promoters for Spots nightclub at Podium.
Okay.
So I started off on Fame FM.
Podium was in Vauxhall, if I'm right.
Yes, Podium, yeah. So I started off doing radio on Fame FM. But prior to getting invited to Fame FM, I'd actually joined a radio course at Loughborough College. So I was doing the course, and then I got the invitation to go on Fame. So I dropped off the course and started doing radio shows. And then I got on TKO. So TKO at that time was, that's the era of LWR and, those big pirate stations. But Horizon was
really and truly, Nigel, you're one of the foundational DJs that we were listening to, unaware of exactly who you were.
That would be a fair comment. And it's funny you say that, actually, because this book here, it's called London's Pirate Pioneers. It's a book about pirate radio in London. And I get 2 mentions in there, which I'm quite chuffed about that. But TKO was interesting. I mean, I've been chased by the DTI because all the pirate stations had their aerials at Crystal Palace, because Crystal Palace is the highest point in South London. So there were lots of chases by the DTI of various pirate radio stations. But I know I've been at Crystal Palace and I've helped put up aerials to broadcast broadcast all sorts. Are you
guys hearing this? That this guy used to go up, and stick up aerials so that we could listen to tunes in our car and stuff like that. It was you. It was you. Because one thing we'd be hearing a DJ talking, then all of a sudden, quick man, the DTI. And people, you hear people scrambling around trying to get their records and get their equipment out before, everything got confiscated. And you was around that and all that time. So then how did the legal stage, how did you get around to getting into the legal side of things? Because obviously that's pirate, isn't it?
Right. Well, see, the thing is, obviously pirates were flourishing and the government cracked down. So they brought in legislation basically saying if you got caught as a pirate DJ, the maximum fine, I think, was £5,000, and you could also end up in prison for 6 months. So I thought, you know what, I like doing this, but I don't like it that much. So I thought, well, let me leave this alone for a while. But then I heard on the grapevine that this company was going to start a legal black radio station, which was Choice FM.
Okay.
So I tracked down their office before they'd started broadcasting. So this must have been 1990. So I tracked down the office, went there with my cassette in my hand, and I met Patrick Berry, who was the managing director, and he didn't even listen to the cassette. He just asked me certain questions about radio, which I could not answer. So legal radio. So I was like, and I was gutted. But what that done for me, I said to myself, I will never find myself in that position again. So I started to research and study radio hard. And then the following year, they had a competition, DJ competition on Choice FM, and I won it. So that's how I got my foot in the door at Choice FM. So then I started sitting in on shows, watching how the DJs done what they'd done. Then I started to do cover because my voice is quite generic, so I could cover any show. You know,
you sound like a white guy.
Yeah, well, ish.
Listen, man, ain't nothing wrong with that, because half the people that will put on this accent say they must cheat, man, right? And then when you and you keep hearing them break out of it and start talking properly. You understand? I wouldn't say properly, but we start talking as if to say we were amongst cousins. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So ain't nothing wrong with that. Ain't nothing wrong with that.
But actually, it served me well in terms of radio, because I could cover any show, whether it be drive time, whether it be a soul show, whether it be a reggae show. In fact, I had my own reggae show.
What was your show called at the time?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. Commander B had a show at night. His was called The Night Flight. I had a 3-hour show called The Weekend Vibes. I can't remember what my reggae show was called.
Well, this is what you sounded like when you was on radio.
Best radio station. Choice FM.
George Benson and Breezing. Weather for later on today. Mainly dry with hazy sunshine. Winds will be light to moderate. Maximum temperature 17 centigrade. That is 63 degrees Fahrenheit.
Now, I reckon we can all remember that background tune that used to go on.
Oh, that's Breezing, George Benson.
But the voice, I grabbed the voice. I actually do grab the voice. My point is, why are you telling us about the weather? Because all we have to do is look out the window and we can see it's
because that's what you do on radio. Has standard things you do, right?
Yeah,
well, legal radio. Yeah. Oh, in fact, well, in terms of horoscopes, I've always been interested in astrology, and I introduced horoscopes to my show. And then a couple of years later, other radio shows started to do it.
What is it like? What is that like when you find that people start mimicking yourself? Because Choice FM obviously was one of the first legal stations. You're coming from Horizon. Yeah, you went over to TKO. You also did Power Jam Radio.
Oh, yeah. No. Not Power Jam. Not Power Jam and not Horizon, TKO and Fame. Even though to say with Fame, there's a guy called Chris Stewart, who was a white DJ, and he owned Horizon. And then when Fame started, Chris Stewart was it belonged to Trevor and Spence, but they were hooked up with Chris Stewart, because it was actually Chris Stewart who called me and asked me if I wanted to be on Fame FM. It wasn't Trevor or Spence, it was Chris Stewart.
Then tell me something. So then how did your name come about then? Because
my name, my DJ.
I don't remember no Nigel Beckles on the radio station.
Right, my DJ name. Well, obviously doing pirate radio, you couldn't use your real name because you didn't want the authorities to track you down. So I adopted the name Nigel B, i.e. Nigel Beckles. And then going back to the 80s. And then this other chap, I believe his name is Nigel Brown. He started to call himself Nigel B. So that caused a lot of confusion, because people would go to events thinking I'm the one who's playing, and it's him who's playing. So, but it just goes with the territory. What can you do? You know, I mean, when I was at Choice, I had certain jingles made, like, would say, like the original Nigel B. In fact, yeah, I had quite a few. I had Destiny's Child. I've done me jingles like that. Mary J. Blige. Because anytime an artist, especially from America, would come to the studio to be interviewed, after the interview, they would just take them to the production studio and ask them to do jingles.
Okay.
That's how a lot of the DJs got all those like personal jingles by, you know, Destiny's Child or Mary J. Blige or whoever.
So it's amazing to think that you were on the station, you know, at that time with such a high profile, but yet on the street we had people like Mystery, who couldn't get a place on like Choice FM.
Well, I never really understood that. I know Paul. He's I've never played with him, but I know him, you know. And we often have some very, really deep conversations when we do meet up. And he's a lovely, lovely guy, because in the DJ game, you know, there are a lot of big egos flying around in that game. And but you know, Paul is a, you know, lovely, down to earth guy. But I could never understand, because I thought he'd be one of the first DJs to get on Choice. But what I realized, even though I got knocked back the first time I approached Choice, I appreciate that, because I wasn't ready. I was a very good live DJ, but I wasn't all that as a radio.
So is there a difference between doing a live set and actual radio?
Absolutely. It's two different beasts. It's two different things. You know, radio is a discipline. And one of the disciplines of radio is everything is basically planned out in advance. The art of radio is to make it sound natural. So even when I was, that clip you played with me reading the weather, well, I'm reading that, but you don't want to sound like you're reading. Okay. That's going to sound naff, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of radio involves reading scripts. And when I joined Choice, the program controller then was a guy called Vince Herbert.
Okay.
And I said to Vince, Vince, what can I do to make myself a better radio presenter? And he goes, practice reading aloud. That's all he said to me, practice reading aloud. So I started to practice reading aloud. Like if I'm reading the paper, reading a book, I started to practice, because I always say that I'm not a natural radio presenter. I'm a very well-trained radio presenter.
So you're not like Patricia Walton then, who's actually natural. She's a natural presenter.
Yeah, Patricia's well, she's brilliant. She's very, very natural. But I wouldn't say I'm a natural at radio. But I'm good at it. I know I'm good at it. But that's because I put the work in. That's what I like about you. What I like is how meticulous you are about anything that you go into. You actually do the research. You actually do the reading on it. You literally read everything that there is to possibly read. Because when you were doing radio, was you doing it full time or was you doing other work at the time? No, I've always worked full time. I've always had a full time job, because even though all the other things I've been involved with, because my attitude was, well, I can't really go to the mortgage company and say, well, sorry, I've got no gigs this month, so I can't afford to pay my mortgage or pay my rent. So I've always had a full time job, and my jobs generally have been in housing management, because I worked for Southwark Council for about 8 years. Okay. And then I worked for Croydon Council for about 16 years. Okay. And both were in housing management.
So tell us how you became, I was talking to you the other day, and you told me a very interesting story about the Black Support Group when it came to the workers and handling disputes, how that came about, and why did that come about?
Okay. Well, I've always been very pro-Black. I've always wanted to find out about Black history. And I think that came from my childhood, in the sense that, not that we were necessarily told when I was at infant school that when they found Black people, we were all swinging around in trees. It wasn't
that was Tarzan. They mistake that. That was Tarzan. That was a white guy who I'm
well aware who
and all them kind of thing there. That some stupid white man used to do that. I know him. Yeah. And he used to talk to the animals as well. Umgawa. I mean, what does Umgawa mean, really?
I don't know.
What does it mean?
Well, like, I have to say, I wasn't a Tarzan fan, but it just struck me that at school I was never taught any Black history. So I buy books, I read, and I've always been very pro-Black, basically. So when I joined Croydon Council, and there's racism everywhere in it, so there was racism there. So upper management decided they were going to allow a support group for black workers in the housing division. So I ended up on the steering group for that.
Okay.
So, and then we created the Housing Black Workers Support Group for Croydon. So I was the general secretary at that time. Then also when I was...
Your administrational skills are coming through in a lot of things that you do.
Oh, give me paperwork all day long. Okay. I love it. I just you know,
do you want to see my desk, rude boy? I didn't know you to come in and tidy up my desk around here. Yeah. But no, tell us about the guy that you actually helped.
Okay, well, I was doing that, but then I also became a Unison shop steward.
Yeah.
So, and I was dealing with cases, mostly of racism, actually, in terms of what was happening in the department. And yeah, it was good in the sense that I never lost a case, and I was dealing with cases where someone was in danger of losing their job. So if you got put on a stage 3 disciplinary, you could lose your job if that meeting didn't go your way. The problem with management is that it's very cliquey. People are not necessarily promoted on the basis of their capability. It's who they go down the pub with for a drink after work, or it's who they're getting a leg over with, or, you know. So, but they've got all these fancy policies and procedures, you know, anti-harassment and bullying procedure, you know, anti-racism procedure, but they don't follow the procedures. So when I go into a meeting to represent one of the employees, it's like, well, I just thought, well, you haven't, your procedure says you should do A, B, and C. Well, you haven't done A, B, and C. So you need to explain this to us. Why have you not followed your own procedures? So it wasn't necessarily that I was very good at what I was doing, but as you said, I research, I read. It's just that they didn't know what they were doing.
So it didn't take too long for it to go around the council that you were actually assisting people with tribunals, and then your desk just ended up getting full of...
Well, not only my desk, I suppose I was kind of a victim of my own success to an extent.
Right.
But I was taking cases home. Some Saturdays I'd have 5-6 piles of paperwork on my living room floor, you know, all different cases that I'm working with. And but something had to give, and I hit a burnout.
Right.
So yes, I was off work for a good few months.
And you was doing all of this free of charge.
Yeah, free of charge. Yeah. But was
the DJ work paying you that much?
Well, the DJ work was fine. But the Black Workers Group, my union work, and I was also on the steering group that created the first Black Housing Association in Croydon.
Okay.
And the guy who got us together is a guy called Curtis Francis, who is now an MBE, I believe. Okay. And so we created that, and that was a lot of work. But yes, I've always been very much justice. Okay. But then again, I'm a Libra, and I'm bang in the middle of Libra season, and the sign of Libra is the scales of justice.
Of scales of justice, okay.
Yeah, so I'm very, but that's just in my bones. I'm very much for, is this fair? You know, is this fair? Is this just? So I've always been that way inclined, and I think, and even with the podcast, you know, I've had, very kindly you came on my podcast last year, and I've interviewed, you know, Lee Jasper, I've interviewed Cheryl Phoenix, you know, Black Child Agenda, and I've interviewed David Mullings, Father First organization, and I've interviewed quite a few Black people who are doing some fantastic work. But
it's one of the reasons why I set this up myself, because it's like you said, there are a lot of us who are out there. I mean, we are the first generation from the Windrush. Right, and obviously we've grown into this society now where quite a few of us have high profile positions, but we're not really made aware of them. who these individuals are. And I think it really, the burden is really on us to highlight this. That's why people like Patricia are important. That's why people like yourself are important. But what I'm really intrigued about is the amount of things that you was doing all at the given same time.
All at the same time, yeah.
You know,
I look back now and I'm quite surprised myself, actually.
Well,
but there was a lot going on.
Because you like you said, you were into housing at the time, and then you went into property.
Oh, that debacle. Yeah. Yes. I was always interested in property and owning property. And while I was at Croydon, there was a guy there, Leon, and someone told me he's got 4 properties. And I said, well, how come he's got 4 properties? So I had a chat with him, and he was involved with this company called Morris Properties. So I thought, okay. And he said, yeah, it's fine. It's, you know. So, yes, I got involved in that. And, I bought some properties from that company. And then it all went pear-shaped. And basically, it was a scam, basically. And, it was a big scandal. It featured on, BBC News. It was in many, national newspapers. It was a big scandal, and some people's lives got destroyed, mine nearly included.
Because you found yourself in an extremely a lot of debt. I'm not talking about a small amount of money.
Oh, you're talking not far off $1 million, because I bought 3 properties from them. But what they were actually doing, they would say, "Oh, we're discounting this property price by 15%. What they were actually doing, they were backhanding the valuers to increase the valuation by 15%. So, So, and I basically, one of the properties I'd bought from them, after I'd bought it, I think I bought it for 138,000, for example. And this is up in York. The properties were in York, up that side of the country. So a few months later, I had the property valued by a local surveyor, local estate agent, and I'd paid 138, and the survey came back at 115. So I thought, what's going on here? So then I started again research. So
this is what I love about it. This is what I love about it.
I started looking at property register, similar properties, similar size in the area, and I thought, nah, something's not right here. So so that's how it all kind of came to light, that it was a scam. And and there's a guy I know who was involved in that as well. He, another victim, I suppose, for want of a better term. And he had encouraged his son to buy property from this company.
Right.
And he is still fighting to try and get some kind of recompense. And I'm talking about, this was back in 2005.
Right.
And this guy is still trying to he's been to high court, and he's still going. 2005, it's like 15 years later, and he's still trying to get some redress. And but it's all experience, Rudy. It's all life, We all get your surname is Lickwood, so we all get our licks. That's how it goes.
But once again, it's like you take this and you turn it around, and you end up working in a Citizens Advice Bureau.
Yeah, I worked there for a while, but again, it's helping people. I enjoy helping people, and I obviously, because I do a lot of reading, but I don't see the point of having information just stuck in my head if it's not going to help somebody. What's the point of that? So I like kind of sharing information, and and just if I think information is going to help someone, even like when we had a chat the other day, and you were saying you're thinking about converting what we're doing now into just audio only, and I said, oh yes, I thought I must send Rudi some information. No, it's like this. I think one of the things that I find in the Black community, which I find really sad, there's still too much of this crabs in the barrel mentality, as opposed to building, trying to build each other up instead of tear each other down.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of understand why it is there, but I think we're too long in the tooth, really, to be going through that now. And not only that, but our youngsters, I found, are better equipped to working together and networking. They understand the strength of networking now. And it's the likes of Andrew Mohammed who's building our youngsters into kings and queens to take advantage of the skill sets that each individual has for the betterment of us all, really and truly.
Well, I think that's good, and that is work to be commended, and that kind of reminds me of when I interviewed Lee Jasper, and I asked him, does he think racism has got better or worse in this country? And he says, well, in some respects it's got better, but in other respects there's obviously the issue of young black guys killing other young black guys, because that wasn't really a thing when we were growing up.
No.
That was we had to be running from the National Front, and them type of races.
Yeah, we had different distractions. I think that's why I think sometimes that our youngsters don't realize exactly how much of a bullet we took for them to be able to have Black Lives Matter and to be able to march down into Trafalgar Square the way that they do. They assume that we never actually did anything at all.
Well, but then again, you see, they need to read history. Again, I love history, and even a couple of weeks ago, I was watching a documentary about the New Cross fire.
Yeah, I saw
and
that.
The aftermath of that Steve McQueen documentary. Yeah. And the aftermath of that, and then the protests. So it's been we've had a long road.
Yeah, but do you not think it's because our stories have not been documented? Or when I say they haven't been documented, they haven't really been shown from our perspective.
Well, yes, because when I interviewed Carlos Anthony, he's the founder of Black Chat, which is now called Front Room, and he stresses very much the importance of Black people controlling their own social media narrative, and it's very important. And and that's why I'm always open to invite guests onto my podcast, again, to raise awareness about what they're doing, because you made a comment earlier about high profile. I think some of the people who are doing some fantastic work in the Black community, they don't have a very high.
No, they don't, and the only reason why they don't is because they're not into sport, or they're not singers. They're not of that ilk. Do you get me? And the thing is, there's so much more to us than just sport and entertainment, as you've proven. The other thing is that, all right, you've produced 150 odd podcasts, and you've spoken to a lot of interesting people, right? And you've helped a lot of people work, get through racism through the tribunals and everything. But then behind you, I can see the big relationship mistakes, right? Now, is this what you actually specialize in now, or what is? Tell us about the big relationships mistakes and how that actually came about.
Okay, well, the title of the book is basically because I've made most of the big relationship mistakes myself, if not all of them, and it's kind of like a long journey, because when I was growing up, I witnessed domestic violence as a child when I was growing up, and then that had certain impacts on me as an adult, which I had to work through. But then people have always gravitated to me for relationship advice. Don't ask me why, because I don't know. But people just gravitate to me. So I thought
easy to talk tonight. Easy to talk.
So I just thought, and I've always liked reading and books and everything. So I thought, you know what, it would be good if I had all the information that I know. Why don't I just put it in one place, i.e. one book? So that's kind of like how the concept started. Then I went through some stuff, and I was journaling, because I'm a great one for journaling, because it helps me. I find journaling very cathartic.
Okay.
And very, certain things on your mind. Sometimes it's just like that release. It's releasing it. To me, writing a journal is like talking to a friend, but I'm just writing it down.
Okay.
So I was writing my journal about some stuff I'd been through, and I was kind of asking myself questions I couldn't answer. I said, well, why did I do that? Or why did I decide to do that? So research. So I started researching. and then yeah. So, and I'm the kind of person, I don't leave any stone unturned. When I say I'm going down the rabbit hole, I'm going down that rabbit hole all the way down. So I started researching on relationships, and then that led me to psychology. Then that led me to self-esteem issues, why people have emotional baggage, and a load of stuff. So when I started to research the book, I mean, the researching of the book actually took me about 5 years.
Whoa.
To do the research. So I published after, and then I'd written, by the time I'd finished the draft, I'd written typed about 800 pages.
Okay.
And obviously no one wants to read an 800-page book. So I found a brilliant editor, Denise Roberts, and so we got it down. So the book as it stands now, the published book is just under 400 pages. So that was the first book. But then obviously I had information and material left over from the original draft. So I'm currently now working, I've just finished 2 book drafts. So one is, the working title for one is How to Avoid Abusive Relationships. And the working title for the other is Exposing the Narcissist in Relationships.
Which I actually find quite interesting, because you actually coach people, you actually talk to, you actually hold like seminars about this, don't you?
Well, I've done podcasts. As I said before, I've done podcasts on abusive relationships. I've done podcasts on narcissists and narcissism, and I get invited quite regularly to discuss narcissism or abusive relationships.
In fact, let me stop you there, because I can actually give people a little glimpse of the sort of thing that you're talking about.
Oh. And he just was obsessed with her. Then he started painting outside her house, oh, you must die. And eventually attacked her, stabbed her several times. He went physically. So, you know, stalking, anything gets stalked online, you know, but if, you know, so it's a lot for a survivor to kind of work through and get through. And if they don't get the proper support, it's going to obviously take them longer to recover.
So tell us a little bit about what was happening there.
Well, that was abusive relationships workshop that I co-facilitated. I work with an organization called Survivor Provider Services, and basically we go into corporations and local authorities. Well, prior to COVID, that's what we were doing, going into organizations and local authorities, basically raising awareness about abusive relationships. I mean, I've worked with colleagues, or a colleague in particular, and it was obvious she was being abused because she's a white lady, but she would come into work, you know, bruised. And the funny and the interesting thing about that was she would have a massive bruise on her arm, but she'd wear short sleeve stuff, so it's clearly visible. And I often thought to myself, well, is she giving a cry for help, but not a verbal cry for help? Right. Because if you've got a massive bruise on your arm, you don't have to wear a short sleeve top. And some people would actually cover it up, you know, to feel ashamed.
Sorry to cut you, just to answer Tegan's question, Ali here. She said, is any of your advice based on personal experiences? Well, the thing is I know you just popped in, but he did mention that growing up as a child, he was brought up in an abusive household. So he witnessed it for himself, as I did as a child growing up, because of the ramifications of racism, I would say, and the pressures that our parents found themselves at when they were in the workplace, and the way in which black men were demasculated and had to feel like when they came home, they had to become these abusive kings. And they say you take it out on the ones you love the most, you know. But there was something that you mentioned towards the end of that clip, where you spoke about men actually being abused and not being able to come forward, and it's not something that's really highlighted.
Well, it's not really spoken about by society. I mean, women are basically stereotyped to be nurturing and caring, but not all women are angels, just as not all men are saints.
Right.
And unfortunately, men, when they do reach out for help, they're often ridiculed. I've read stories of guys going to the police station asking for help, and they'll say, like, grow up, big boys don't cry, and put your big boy pants on and get out of it. Get out of here, basically. So I've kind of I try and raise awareness about that. The other thing that struck me several years ago, a good friend of mine, her son, who was about 25 at the time, he committed suicide, and it's still a mystery to this day as to why. So I started researching male suicide, and I discovered something called the silent epidemic, which is basically young men between 15 and 25 committing suicide. At the other end of the scale, you've got men who are 45, 50 plus again. But then when you look at the suicide rate worldwide, male suicide is 2/3 plus higher than it is for women. So that led me to the question, well, why is that? And I believe it's because as boys, we are generally not orientated to express our emotions. So a lot of guys walk around with all this stuff bottling up in their brain, and they've got no outlet for it.
So I take it you've created a safe haven for where people can actually discuss these things, or they can talk about these things. I mean, you've got I believe, if you can tell us a bit about your Facebook groups.
Oh, okay. Well, in terms of domestic abuse, 10 years ago, I started a Facebook group with a friend of mine. It's called Reflections on Abusive Relationships. So obviously I read stories in there every day, and it's probably got about 20,000 plus members now. Then last year I started a group just for guys, because they can have a safe haven, as you put it, because a lot of guys, even if they're not being abused, they may just have certain emotions, but a lot of guys fear being judged by their peers and by their friends.
I fear being judged by my wife, never mind my peers.
So at the end of the day, it's important for people to have a safe, whatever gender they may be. It's important to have a safe space where you can feel heard and what you've got to say feels validated.
Okay.
That's very important, because again, in terms of domestic abuse, again, whatever gender, people may ask the question, well, why did you stay? Or why didn't you leave? And that puts the onus on the person who's been suffering the abuse, not the abuser. Because there's lots of reasons why people stay in abusive relationships. There could be financial abuse involved as well, where the abusive partner controls all the finances. So you've got no financial resources to leave.
Okay.
For example.
Okay. Do you not find it hard to do you cut off once you hear all these stories? Do you understand what I mean?
Oh, I understand exactly what you mean. And I've had to train myself to do that because I'm very empathic. So I'm very much aware of energy, and I believe energy is a real thing. So if you are exposing yourself to negative emotions and energy continuously, eventually it's going to affect you. If you're an empathic person, it's going to affect you. So you have to learn to kind of look at the situation objectively,
right?
Because obviously you want to help, and obviously you want to give the person the best advice you can. Saying that, I don't really get involved with one-to-one coaching in terms of abuse too much.
Okay.
And the question you asked me earlier, actually, how did I get involved in being a certified relationship coach? Well, after I'd written the book, which had taken 5 years, I thought, well, the next logical step would be to become a certified relationship coach. So that's what I'd done. And because I'd done 5 years research, as basically a PhD, taking the actual course to become certified was relatively straightforward.
Well, all I can really do is commend you, to be honest with you. No, I have to, because I mean, I sort of said to myself, there was a couple of things I wanted to do. I wanted to either become an electrician, a caterer, or a comedian. And I stuck to those things. I never really stepped outside of that. I mean, I coached in terms of the stand-up comedy and passed on, transfer learning the skills that I had when it came to being a comic. But you've gone into all these separate areas, and not only that, but you've set up groups and you've set up organizations which can actually help people. And that's all you've really been. You're a giver. You're a giver.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because going back to suicide, a guy I grew up with, again, going back to East Croydon, my childhood, a guy I grew up with, Michael Warren. We were always in and out of each other's houses as kids. And sadly, he committed suicide several years ago. So I went to the funeral, and his mum and dad were there. Obviously, they're getting on in years. And so I went up to his parents. I went up to his mum, and I said, "Oh, you probably don't remember me, but I'm Nigel Beckles. I was a friend of Michael's." And she looked me up and down. She goes, "Oh, Nigel Beckles. Yes, I remember you. You wanted to be a doctor." I was like, "Did I?" I'm like, "Did I?" Because you're talking about probably when I was like 6 or 7. You know, I'm like, "Did I?" But yeah.
Sounds like one of those questions that your aunts and uncle would ask you on a Sunday evening when they all pop round. You know what I mean? For some rum and a little dance up kind of like thing. You know what I mean? Meanwhile, you're getting washed in a basin with a rag. You know what I mean? So I kind of get that. But I'm gonna have to draw this to a close because we've done over an hour.
Oh wow! How time flies when you're having fun.
It really does. And if there are any questions other than the question that Ali put in, please feel free to ask Nigel now. I mean, here's a guy who I would have to say, you know, I have to applaud you. I genuinely have to applaud you. I mean, you're egoless. That's the other thing about you. You're egoless. You've got no ego, even though everybody has an ego. I believe everybody's got an ego. To think that you started out in Dougie's when Dougie's started to make their name, you know what I mean? You were holding dances all over the place. You had a band, you know, and then you went into, and at the same time, you were still working all of this time, you know. You've been helping people along the way when it comes to race relations, you know, Citizens Advice Bureau, you know. Not everybody is so giving of their time. The way that you have been, you've in less than 15 months, you've produced over 150 podcasts, which people can actually find. In fact, I think I put up the podcast. Let's see if I can find it. Here you go. Is that correct? They can find it on Anchor.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. And if if people just Googled author Nigel Beckles podcast.com, I've got a dedicated website, or if they just Google author Nigel Beckles, they'll find my podcast. Trust me.
So if you're driving from London to Birmingham, or say Birmingham to London, do you know what I mean, and you want to listen to something other than I don't know, our local radio stations that's blasting out some tremendous music. I'm not knocking the music, by the way. Some tremendous music, but you want some easy listening, you know, and finding out more about what's going on in the community and the different things that people are getting up to other than entertainment or sport. I would recommend that you tune into Anchor and you do listen to some of Nigel Beckles' podcasts, because I found them quite interesting myself, to be honest with you. Yeah, so if there's any questions that anybody's got, I'll put them up for you straight away. And here's one straight away. Where does Nigel get his free time to breathe away from helping others? Which is a good question. I mean, what?
I'm not doing it. I mean, it's not like I'm helping people 24/7. You know, because obviously I've got the things that I like to do, like writing and research and other stuff. You know, but I think it's important to share. I think kindness doesn't cost you anything. I think that karma is real. And I think whatever you give out in this world, eventually it's going to come back to you one way or the other. You know, I will help anyone if I can, if I'm in a position to do so, or point them in the right direction. Because sometimes it's not really a question of myself having all the required information. Sometimes it's just about signposting. Because
Okay.
if I don't know something, I'll say, "Oh, I'm not sure about that." But if you have a look over there, you might find the answer over there, or I might have a quick Google. Because I always say Google is your friend. The internet is a tool. It depends what you're using it for. You can be using it to look up porn, or you can be looking at it to find useful information. What are you using it for? It's like having a hammer. You can use a hammer to build a house or destroy a house. What are you using it for?
Okay, which is a fair question. Right, there was somebody's image I wanted to bring up here. Give me 2 seconds. I'm sure I will find him. Where is it? If it's not in that folder. See, I wish I was as organized as yourself, my friend.
Flattery will get you everywhere.
I wish I was organized as you, my friend. And it's this image coming up now.
Menelik.
Yeah.
Tell
us about your relationship with Menelik.
Menelik, made me feel a bit sad now. Menelik was a lovely guy. I started a Facebook group, 10 years ago, another group. This is Reflections on Relationships. And I started the group to get feedback on my writing and to have debates about relationships. Anyway, Menelik heard of this group because I wasn't aware of how legendary he was in terms of a director. I had a vague idea of him because I had watched Burning an Illusion many years ago. And he contacted me and he said, he's making this documentary about Black relationships and would I like to be a contributor? So I was like, okay. And so I went to the sitting. That must have been 2014. So I went to the sitting and I thought I'd cocked it up because yes, I've been a radio presenter and blah, blah, blah. But when you got a camera in your face, for me, that was a different ball game.
Well, you know that radio, TV, live performance are separate things. Different skills are required.
So I thought I was going to end up on the cutting room floor, to be honest. But then a few weeks later, he contacted me and said, have I got any pictures of myself back in the day? And I've always loved taking pictures, so I've got loads of pictures. So I sent him a few.
Yes, as I can testify, you have loads.
That's in Barbados. I can't remember what birthday that was.
You have loads of pictures.
I do love taking pictures. Oh yeah, that's Reggae Lounge in Barbados.
That's you.
That's Egypt. Yeah, that's Egypt.
That's you in Egypt. Is you stepping out of?
Oh, that's Fair Play Promotion. That's Miss Unique, which was a promotion that Al Hamilton MBE, that was his promotion. He and Al was working with Rodney Hines at the time, and that's how we got involved with Al Hamilton after we'd started Fair Play Promotions.
And here is
Barbados, my favorite toy in Barbados. Can't go to Barbados and not have a jet ski ride.
And that's your younger brother standing next to you, I believe.
Yes, the tall guy. Yeah, he's my younger brother, Nicholas.
So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you. Finish your story with me.
Okay, yeah. So looking for love. So yes, he asked me to send him some photos. I sent him the photos, and then I got an invite, obviously, to the premiere at the British Film Institute. So I'm sitting there watching the documentary, and I was shocked. I was in it as much as I was in it, to be quite honest. And then after that, we became really great friends. Menelik and he's been to my place, him and his partner. I think 2018, he was working on a series, Heat, which was basically a Black EastEnders, like a soap opera based in Barbados. And we were both in Barbados at the same time, so we met up, for a few hours, had a chat. But very, very gracious man. Very, very, very talented, very gracious guy. And in fact, I was even sending him information because earlier this year he was looking at doing the Story of Lovers Rock Part 2. Yeah. So he asked me if I've got any pictures of fashion from back in the day, like the Cecil G's and
the Gabici.
Yeah, Gabici. So I did. I sent him those, and then I had a look online for him to see if I could find any other examples. Then he wanted to contact Roy Medallion, the Lovers Rock King, because he wanted to do an interview with Roy. So I passed on the contact information. And but even when we were having a chat the other day, you said you were due to interview.
The weekend that he passed away, he was due to be on the show on the Monday, which was quite heartbreaking because I was cussing him out throughout the week for not getting back to me. And the deadline was creeping up on me. And then when I found out that he passed away, you can imagine the amount of guilt that just weighed.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, fortunately, I interviewed Menelik last November.
So that's also so they can actually hear that on the podcast. They can
yes, yeah. So I interviewed him in November because he'd relocated to Zimbabwe.
Zimbabwe, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so he was living there. So yeah, I was very shocked, and I was only maybe 6 weeks before that, if that we were emailing each other, gonna send him some music, so from the 70s and 80s, like reggae, lovers rock, etc. From that era, I thought, well, maybe these might be useful for you.
Yeah, we were Skyping around that time, but I didn't realize just how, because I knew that he looked like he lost weight and everything, but I didn't realize just exactly how ill he was. Well,
I didn't realize because I had not seen any visual representation of Menelik, so I had no idea he'd lost weight because everything was by even with the interview I'd done with him, that was by phone. It wasn't by like Zoom or anything.
Okay,
and that was November.
You got to step up, man. Visuals are important. Visuals are important, man.
Well, I like to work to my strength. I'm obviously coming from a radio kind of background.
Because you come from radio, man.
That audio, because it's all, to me, it's all the same stuff. Whether it's whether you're DJing, whether you're doing radio, whether you're doing podcasts.
No, it's not, because when you were being interviewed, by Menelik, you found out that you got tongue twisted, because you got camera on you now,
but it's still audio and it's still editing.
If they can't see you, you're ballsy, and you got everything you want to say. But the moment we can see you, you're like, oh my god. Oops.
Well, but that's the good thing about when you're doing audio, because at the end of the day, if someone says to you in radio, if someone says to you, "Oh, you've got a good face for radio," that means you're ugly. Trust me.
You were ugly, man. I mean, keep it real. You were ugly.
My Billy Ocean look. That was 1984. That was a chap. Mark John was in the British Navy, and he was involved in the Falklands, and that was his coming home party.
Really? I don't know if Frith is still in the room, but look at the amplifiers he's using. Jesus Christ.
I think that was a Sony, actually.
Everybody used to have a stack of decks. We used to have a stack of them, man. Do you know what I mean? And there you are walking around with this thing. You know what? Yeah. I used to like walking next to the guy who was carrying that, because I ain't carrying that. No way. When we used to go on the excursions, right? My brother used to have one, and I used to say, yeah, come on, Kelvin, let's go. And he'd have to carry that thing, man. It was great on the coach, you get me? But when it was time to go on the fun fair and all them kind of things, you got left with it, man. Nah, man.
That was my best friend.
Trust me.
Yeah. I love music. I still love music, and I play music every day. I could be doing what I'm doing online, writing, whatever. But I've always got music playing, always.
Well, Nigel, we've got the final question that's coming for you. It's coming in from Claire Tong.
Oh, what's next for Nigel?
Considering you've done all these things, man. I mean, what is next for you?
Well, next for me is publishing 2 further books. I think that's going to be my focus, as I mentioned earlier. Obviously, do some more podcasting. When I'm not sure how this COVID situation is going to go. I mean, I'd love to get back out there to do workshops again, but I'm looking at actually doing virtual workshops.
I think that seems to be the way that people are going now.
Yeah, Yeah.
I do have issues with it in that. As you pointed out, when you're talking about the housing, I tend to find that people who teach people, whether it be Facebook, Instagram, finance, housing, tend to be making their money from the training as opposed to actually doing the thing itself, if you follow what I mean.
Well, there are different things you got to look at when you're delivering a workshop. So if you're delivering it one-to-one in person, That's one thing. If you're doing it online, that's something else. Because the other thing you've got to bear in mind with workshops, people learn in different ways. Some people like their material in writing, some people like visual, some people like pictures, some people like a mix of both. So in fact, I was discussing this, there's an organization called Training for Influence, and they interviewed me a few months ago. And that was, the questions that I was asked, like, how do you deliver your training? What's the most effective way to deliver training? How do you measure the effectiveness of your training?
Whoa.
So I know, so like things like, for example, like when I was doing workshops in the real world, I always have handouts.
Okay.
Because sometimes people are not going to absorb the information,
No.
and that's the other thing you've got to bear in mind.
Yeah.
You don't want to overload people with information. But I will always have handouts. I always have feedback forms in terms of because it's always a continuous learning process for me too, right? Because I know I don't get it right all the time. So it's good to get feedback from the people who attend to say, well, what they liked, what maybe they didn't like so much. Someone might say, well, I prefer more visuals, or I might prefer more information in the handout. Right. So, but I believe it's always good to give people something to take away.
Okay.
Because sometimes it can be, a lot of information to come.
It can be a lot of information.
Especially when you're talking about relationships, abusive relationships, and heavy subjects like that. It can get overwhelming for some people.
Well, just watching the clip, I must admit, I found it quite overwhelming to think that you're talking about somebody who ended up stabbing someone.
Yeah, that was a stalking case here in the UK, and it started off all very innocently. This lady met this guy in a pub. They just started talking in the pub, but he lived quite near to her, and then he invited her to watch a band, and I think she turned him down, and then from there he started to stalk her, started writing outside her house, "I'm gonna kill you, you're gonna die," and it kind of escalated until he actually attacked and stabbed her. But then, again, with abusive relationships now, again, that can happen. The abuser, after the person leaves, the abuser will not accept it's over. They start stalking. Because when you understand, basically with abusive relationships, your starter for 10 is abusive relationships are about power and control.
Right.
Now, they may have different tactics, how they try and achieve that, but that's the motivation, power and control. And some disturbed people will take that to the ultimate end. The power and control could be the end of someone's life, i.e., if I can't have you, no one can have you.
Yeah. Well, Nigel, I'm going to put to a close, man. It's been an interesting conversation, I must say. And I noticed that we held on to quite a few people in the room. Could we just get a couple of number ones for Nigel sharing his life journey with us? And I could just let him know that he's got, we've all appreciated the fact that he's actually come on today. You didn't really have to take that time out with me, and I do appreciate that. I genuinely appreciate that. Thank you very much for doing so.
Thank you, Patricia.
You'll be coming out with your 2 books. We'll be looking forward to that. I hope people will, of course, tune into your podcasts. And if there's anybody who's got any other further questions, or maybe didn't want to, ask any question on here, they can obviously get in touch with you.
I'm on all the platforms. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. I'm easy to find.
He's easy to find. So please do that. So all I can say to you guys is thank you very much for joining me on Keep It Real. As you can see, there are so many unsung heroes out here. It's just unbelievable. And next week, I want to bring you another unsung hero. I wouldn't say he's unsung, actually, because he is. He's actually well known. So thank you very much for joining me, Nigel. Please don't leave. All right, I'm just going to close the show, and then we'll still be, the two of us will be able to chat at the end, okay?
Okay,
so
cool.
Don't go. So that was Nigel Beckles, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining me. Week 4. It's been all right, innit? It's been all right, eh? It's been all right. Fab show. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So hopefully I will catch you guys next week where I will be talking to the one and only. Thank you for joining me this week on the Rudi Lickwood Chat Show, and my guest, Nigel Beckles. As you can see, a very, very interesting man. Next week, it's all about the one and only Nereus Joseph.
Oh, what a shame, yeah. How so many
So tune in, don't be late. Join me.
I see him every day on the corner, stretching out his hand to beg another dollar. Since he touched the powder, Johnny starts to falter. Destruction's on its way to another brother, giving up his soul to a brand new slave master. Johnny was a scholar, but now he holds no order. So you man, no matter follow them example. Make Babylon turn you in a sample. With dignity and
Join me and Rudi Lickwood for the Rudi Lickwood Chat Show.
So as you can see, he's been in the game for more than just a minute. So tune in with me next week on the 20th of September, where I will be talking to the one and only Mr. Nereus Joseph. You guys have a fantastic week. See ya. Yep, make sure you catch me next week, all right? Bye.